Welcome, my name is Sandy Brockett. I'm the Director of Community and Culture here. And I am so excited for this. I had a little bit of a fangirl moment when Heidi emailed me, because when I was a young photography student, I saw a bunch of Martha Cooper's photographs and saw your work in it, and I was like, oh my God, who are these guys that were like bombing up the entire side of trains in New York in the 70s? And there was this moment, well, actually more recently I had when I was in Chicago at Rebuild Foundation. For those of you that don't know, it's the Astor Gates' foundation, who has the entire, excuse me, Freddie Knuckles archive. And it was really incredible speaking to him, and there was this DJ, more of a second gen, Dwayne Powell, about the birth of house music in Chicago. And he was like, well, you know, it wasn't just house in Chicago, it was also techno in Detroit that was happening concurrently. And it was hip hop in New York that was happening. And we were all kind of borrowing from each other, you know, talking about like the 808 beat that was actually made in Detroit, sold to someone in Chicago, sold to Frankie in Chicago, and how a lot of like the hip hop crews were like Fab Five, Freddie was like influencing also Chicago house, and there was this birth of a generation of Black and brown artists, trans, queer, underground scenes and spaces that were expressing and revolutionizing something new that no one in America had seen yet. And Lee was definitely part of that movement in New York. It was happening in the streets, it was happening in music, it was happening in underground warehouse parties. And so it's a total honor to have you in the house tonight. And many thanks to Charlie James for bringing his work to your gallery, and to Patrick Martinez to being here in conversation. An amazing artist also that has a new show up at Dallas Contemporary. Amazing artist doing great things. So thank you so much for being here. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Heidi Johnson, who will tell you a little bit more about these legendary figures that we are graced by today. So thanks for joining.
Thank you. Bear with me. Welcome to the celebration of 50-year career of New York graffiti legend Lee Quinones. Tonight we will be joined in conversation by LA-based multimedia artist Patrick Martinez and gallery owner Charlie James. Lee Quinones is considered the most influential artist to emerge from the New York subway art movement of the 1970s and 80s. Born in Ponce, Puerto Rico in 1960 and raised in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, Quinones started painting trains in 1974, then shifted to a studio-based practice. Lee's career contains many firsts, including the first integrated 10-car subway piece, the first freestanding graffiti murals executed on the Lower East Side handball courts. Lee is also known for being among the first graffiti artists to successfully transition from the street to mainstream gallery world. He has exhibited in prominent galleries and institutional settings around the world in exhibitions such as Documenta No. 7 and at spaces including Barbara Gladstone, Rodolphe Warner, and White Columns, among many others. Lee was also featured in Blondie's Rapture video and is the star of Charlie Heron's film classic Wild Style, made in 1983. We are very proud to celebrate Lee tonight and his illustrious career. And then I want to introduce Patrick Martinez, is a leading LA-based multimedia artist whose work responds to the visual signatures of the city of California. I'm sorry, of Los Angeles. Patrick's first survey exhibition titled Histories is on view at the Dallas Contemporary through September of this year. His work is also currently on view at MoCA Los Angeles and at the Rubel Museum in Miami, Florida. Patrick's neon work just enjoyed a year-long run at the Whitney Museum of American Art in New York City. Patrick and Lee are both represented by Charlie James Gallery here in Los Angeles. And finally, Charlie James Gallery opened in 2008 and is co-directed by Charlie James and Ever The gallery's ethos asserts that art should reflect the time and place of its making, and the gallery is known for platforming work of significant political and cultural engagement. The gallery places great value in historicizing its artists through institutional placements and academic studies. The gallery operates out of 2 spaces on Chungking Road in Chinatown in Los Angeles, and we hope to see you all there Saturday for Lee's opening and book signing. And I'll give it to Charlie from here.
Bravo, Heidi. Thank you, Lee. Thank you, everybody. Thanks so much for coming. I'm a lucky fella, you know, to get to work with guys like this. Lee is a living legend, and Patrick is I don't want to, embarrass, he's a humble guy. He's a legend in the making. He's a legend to many. I mean, he's an important artist, and to get to work with both of them is something it's a privilege, and there's a weight to it too. But it's really wonderful. Lee, above your head, I just put a picture of the book. I don't know. We unfortunately don't have I don't know if you guys back there can see the book, but the book is beautiful. The Italians are wonderful publishers, and the Damiani Press just issued this book. It's a gorgeous monograph that not only showcases what Lee did in the streets, right? Which is, we're going to talk a lot about that, right? Of course we are. But Lee is a superb painter and a very serious fine artist. And Heidi and Zandy both remarked about all these firsts. The first 10-car train, the first crossover into the art world, among the first. Everything is among the first. We're going to continue to highlight those, and the book, I think, does a fine job of that as well. The book is not available tonight. We're not that we're withholding people, right? Like the art world does a lot of withholding. I'm sorry, you can't have it. You have to quote. You can't have it right now. I'm sorry, but you can have it, and all you have to do is just come to the gallery on Saturday night. And if you ask Lee nicely, and Lee will he'll do it either way, I bet you, but he'll sign it for you, and you'll have a story, and you'll have a nice moment with Lee. But again, I just want to thank Lee and Patrick. I'm just, like I said, I'm a lucky fella. So this is kind of fun. So what do we do? How do we help an artist that's out of 50 years of making? Lee is the world's. How could this person have worked for 50 years as a fine artist? How is that possible? Lee is the world's. It's possible because he started when he was 14 years old, and there's a lot to talk about here. We could be here forever, but in terms of the weight of responsibility, how do we show Lee the love, right? I hope you help me do it. I hope the show this weekend shows that we love him, and then we ask some of his friends to, chime in. Lee, why don't you sit over here, maybe? You got to watch this.
What up, Lee? Congratulations, man, on the 50 years. You're a huge influence to me and all the other writers out here. Those train cars you did, the handball courts, they're burned in my brain forever, man. You're still relevant today. Keep crushing them. Love you, man.
Yo, all right. To my brother from another mother, Lee, eternal love, eternal respect. So much amazing history we share. Things we did changed the game, changed the world a little bit. You listened to me, I listened to you way back then, and we executed amazingly on ideas, dreams, things we wished for, things we wanted. And it's just amazing after so many years. The struggle, the game still continues. Thankfully, to the Most High, we still here, putting it down for the crown, baby. So Lee, a lot of love, and man, just, what can I say? I'm speechless. Kind of, sort of. Love you, Lee. And so much more. My man.
Hey, what's up, Lee? This is Gajin Fujita. You've not only been a big influence early on in my career, but as well a huge inspiration. From being mesmerized by your artworks that were in Subway Art, to watching you star in Wild Style. Thank you, man. Huge congratulations on celebrating 50 years of painting. Peace.
So, I just want to wish my good friend, George Lee Quinones, congratulations on finally having your long-awaited book release. 50 years of amazing content. Thank you, Lee, for your contribution. Love you so much.
Lee, it's been 50. Not this Lee, you Lee. Quinones, not Lee 163rd. I know it's confusing. I've been asked this question 10 times a day if this is you. You've done incredible things in 50 years. Congratulations. It's awesome. You Lee, not this Lee. Thank you, Lee. Keep going. Party hard.
Lee, Alfonso Gonzalez Jr. here. Just want to say thank you. Thank you for being such a great example. Thank you for being an inspiration to me, generations before me, and generations that are going to come. As a graffiti writer, you've just shown that it's possible to have a career in contemporary art. And you continue to do that, and it's amazing to see. So congratulations on the 50 years. Peace.
Lee, 50 years, man, wow. It's unbelievable. Who would have thought 50 years ago we would be where we are today? I remember reading your fashion motto during Graffiti Art Success for America. And I think the most important thing is what you and some other folks did has changed the world. As teenagers, man, you guys changed the world. Graffiti has changed the world. Wow, all the best to you, my brother.
Lee, your work has always meant so much to me, from subway trains to your black books, to your works on paper and massive canvases and murals that you've done. You've shown me so much throughout the years, not only as an artist, but as a friend and human being. And I want to congratulate you on your new book, your exhibition, and all the work going forward. Lots of love from Puerto Rico.
What up, Lee? Congratulations on your upcoming show at Charlie James Gallery, and huge congratulations on celebrating 50 years of such a prolific career as not only a studio artist, but a graffiti legend. And just want to give my gratitude to what that's meant to me and to many people who've come after you. Peace.
Yo, Lee, check this out, man. It's Omar Rashid, just saying what's up. And I mean, I came to your show at Charlie James, maybe I think it was a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. I met you in person. Man, amazing work then, amazing work always. I'm so happy for you. 50 years of your work in a book. I think that's amazing. So all I want to say is like, yo, just keep it going, keep it moving, keep the vibrations high, and peace. Thank you.
Lee, what's up? Happy 50th. I just want to say thank you. I'm sure I speak not only for myself, but for thousands of others. Coming from a place of real gratitude and appreciation to you for opening up a whole world of possibilities for us. You did it then and you continue to do it today. Personally, I find tremendous inspiration from you. And I can say in all sincerity that I don't think I would be here if it weren't for you. So thank you very much. Happy 50th, and I hope you guys are having an amazing time.
What's up, Lee? Congratulations on your 50 years of work. Just want to give you flowers for being such an inspiration to the culture.
Outlaw.
And many others as well. Thank you.
Lee, congratulations on 50 years of excellent work. Your ambition, daring, and commitment helped release a creative force around the world. An impact that we're still seeing today. A movement that emerged from what many would think is the unlikeliest of places, right? Totally outside of the academy. I want to thank you for helping to inspire and being a main figure in one of the most influential movements, artistic movements of the 20th century. That's a lot. Congratulations again.
Bravo, Lee. Whoa. Feel some love? Special thanks to Patrick he roped in a lot of those fellas, and yeah, we're just really happy, Lee. Everybody loves you, that's for sure. Oh yeah, I gotta use all my hands here. So I hope everybody got the little handouts. We're kind of excited about those. Lee made a beautiful piece that's in the book that kind of is the Lee timeline, and we're not going to be totally devoted to it, but it's fun and it might help guide you for Q&A if we have time at the end. But if you see, check that out up there, 1974. Lee's born in 1960. He's 14 years old, and he's running around. Let's see, 1975. Lee creates first of 100 plus subway car. It's just nuts. He's 14, 15 years old, and Lee and Patrick are connected. When I asked, Patrick makes work. I think most people in here have seen it, but if you haven't, Patrick takes the visual language of LA and kind of massages it, collages it, paints it into abstractions, but abstractions that locate you. And I remember early on I said, well, Patrick, where'd that come from, man? Where did it come from, this idea of reflecting the city? And he's like, Lee, that's what he said. And that was the only thing he said. And Patrick has a timeline. It's a different timeline than this, but Patrick had a big brother, like maybe 3 or 4, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years older than him. And they were running around too, and 12, 13, 14. But I kind of want to just hand off to Patrick and just hear a little bit about, both of you guys running around. I know Patrick first saw you, Lee, in this book here, this Chalfont book. And I think he'll talk more about it, but I think this spread was a big deal. There's you in action, it looks like a little bit. But anyway, some connections here. Oh, Patrick on?
Hello. So, yeah, I was probably, like 11 or 12 years old, 91, 92, and everyone and their mom was doing graffiti in my neighborhood, especially my brother. He's 2 years older than me. He was just running the streets, and I was interested in it. I kind of got bit by the bug, and him and his older friends were kind of running around, I was tagging along, and they were just tagging on everything they could find, buses and walls and whatever they could figure out, freeways and things like that. And when I was in middle school, I came across spray can art. I know a lot of people kind of came across subway art first. I kind of did it in reverse. I found spray can art, and typically, I think my brother gave it to me. He checked it out or stole it from the library. And typically, you can, if you can get your hands on that book, it was like a big thing, because in the 90s, it was like nothing was out and printed like that. So it became our copy, right? Like he just kind of took it, and then I kind of looked into it, and this spread with Lee was like one of the first things I saw in the book, and I don't know what kind of grabbed me, and I just saw the handball courts and the wall work that he was doing, even though the photo of him is he's rocking a subway car. But that's what my first introduction to Lee was these walls, and I was just kind of like blown away, manipulating. Not that I could articulate it then, but I was totally mesmerized by like taking something that you're not supposed to make art with and making art with it. So that was like it was a weird thing, because a lot of my brother's friends were tagging, and then along comes this the Old Testament, or like it's just, it kind of froze me, and it made me want to slow down and think about what I put on the wall, or what am I trying to say in a piece, and that's what the work did for me. It kind of just okay, maybe I'm not running with these guys right now. I'm kind of taking my time and in black books and drawing more, and I was always drawing, but Lee kind of made me pay attention to what's on my surroundings and what's on the wall, to the left of me and to the right of me, what's the messaging that what's this mural's kind of about. So that was my introduction to your work, and it throws me like it's when in any type of interview that kind of comes up, your name comes up because of this work, and yeah.
So the 70s, Lee. So the 90s, I wonder if there's for another time, I wonder if there's a similarity between the 90s and the 70s. But take us back to 74. Patrick and I, we went over all these questions. We're like, what was it, on the stove? Take us back to 74. Why the trains? Why, obviously you must have some gift, but take us back to 74, 75, 76. You're running around. Just paint us a picture if you can.
This is working, right? 74, by that time, the city was sort of marinating in its own misery at that time. Things were, I always use the same phrase, things were crazy. Times were crazy, but things were great because there was so much opportunity on the street. The streets were buck wild, and there's a notion that the Bronx was burning. I'm sorry, I give them props. The Bronx was burning, but so was Brooklyn, so was Manhattan, the Lower East Side, my neighborhood. And there was just a sense of, I wouldn't say hopelessness, because New Yorkers are kind of resilient in that way. They're like, yeah, okay, we have a reason to party then. We just have a green light to do anything. There was camaraderie, but there was also a sense of like, we need to take control of the wheel here, or even reinvent the wheel and then make it ours. And that went across all the genres of creativity, not only in the in the artistic movement and the visual arts, but in music and poetry and acting, underground films and stuff like that. So there was a lot. New York has always been a very photogenic, town. You can do anything there, and it just looks really, really cool because it's just always happening and changing, morphing into something else. And so, there was, as a child, as a young person myself, I was like, well, there's not many options on the streets that are going to give me anything back that I feel really proud of. I never wanted to break my parents' hearts, so, for that reason, I was like, I have power in my work and expressing myself, and I think that I could use that as a vehicle itself and using graffiti as that vessel that I can really touch people all across the city. I was like, this is something that I can run with and I can identify with.
We put a snap over your head, and it's not teenage years exactly, I don't think, but it's Zephyr and it's Lenny and you, and Future and you, and we wanted to ask you, we talk a lot about community these days, and it must have felt good, right? Where they're just interested in the relationships that pulled you in and kept you there. Anything special? Some special friends who took you out there the first time, kind of out there to the yards?
Yeah, well, there's a work in the show right now that's called The Bowery Boys, and I lived right by at the foot of the Bowery where it started, by Chinatown, the waterfront there, and there was this DJ musician by the name of Flea. Flea One. He wrote Flea, like the little insect, Flea. Someone told me, yo, Flea knows how to get into the subway yard. So I was seeking, I wanted to really be involved in the subway movement, and I just didn't know where to go. And he says, yeah, we can just, and when I finally met him, he's like, we'll go up to the Bowery. I'm like, Bowery? Where the trains are underneath the Bowery. And he was a graffiti writer that he dived in between music and writing, as we called it back then. We weren't even calling ourselves graffiti writers, we were calling ourselves writers. So he led me by the hand into the most scariest place and the most claustrophobic place and dark place in my life. I was like, wow, what do you, I remember distinctively looking down the platform. The Bowery itself, the station itself, was the most decrepit, like it was right out of a movie set, Escape from New York. It was, you went down like 3 or 4 levels and you was in the bowels, in the grottos, you know, and it was really cave-like and it was really scary. There was never anyone on the station. And when people came out with the trains, they ran out of the station. You know, if you stood there long enough, you were going to be just minced meat. But he takes me down there, and I look around, and you know, tiles are falling off the wall, and there's like crud and rust coming through the ceiling. I'm like, you know, I was like, what's this guy gonna do? You know, where are we going? And he shows me. He says, there they are. Look into the tunnel, and you see these little 4 red beady lights just sitting there, you know, and I went in there with paint that was given to me by the son of a man, a gentleman, if you want to say that was running a flower shop for made guys. So it was a flower shop right next to a funeral where a lot of people were, you know, were viewed in their last days, and he says, I'm gonna get you some paint. And he gave me flower paint. I did my first masterpiece with flower paint on a subway car. The most scariest thing happening after that visit was Flea telling me, this now you have to do for the rest of your life. And I was like, you know, so I'm like, what do you mean?
It's like some wizard thing or something.
It was weird because I was like, yeah, my concept was, you gotta remember, okay, growing up, I saw Great Danes and thought that they were baby horses. You know, I thought the Vietnam War was a rites of passage, that's what you do to grow into a man. You know, and I was scared shitless. I was like, I'm probably gonna die. Maybe I won't, but I'm probably going to die, and I'm not going to live past 20. So when I saw trains and I saw the names, I was like, oh wow, you just go once and your name is all over the city. When he told me, no, your name is a little speck. Your name is a tiny little dust particle in 1,000 trains. You have to do this over and over again. And that was the scariest thing I ever.
But it must have felt awesome, right? You must have got hooked, right? There was a hook in there somewhere.
I think what hooked me was my ambition to create things of beauty. I think it was past the adrenaline of trying to, you know, slip into municipality, you know, like in the backyards, you know, in the slip past authority and get away with it. It was more about like, I want to now build up on this and make my name bigger than myself. So that was like the ambition that kept me going. But Flea he kind of broke off and started getting more into music and other things in the streets that were not necessarily the best for him. So I just kept painting and painting.
I can't help it. So just like how many, like describe, you know, solo Lee running around, you're 14, 15, 16, and just you and the Fabulous Five. We should break down what that is. People misuse that term constantly, I think, including, well, hopefully not me too much, but whatever. But I assume there's a progression maybe. Take us through, like, you know, you're running around scared to death, and then you start, you know, then the masterpieces come, and then the collabs come. Yeah.
Everything happens really fast. Within a year or so after I painted my first train, I'm already now curious about how to do a whole car. And by 1975, somewhere mid-1975, I did one of my first whole cars. And then it was on from there. What happened with the Fabulous Five? Now, the Fabulous Five was a small group of graffiti writers that were from all 5 boroughs of the city. We were all from, you know, each one of us were from one of the boroughs. And for some reason, most of them ended up on Staten Island in Stapleton, actually where Wu-Tang Clan is from, and way before that. But I met those guys, which were all gang members. They were in, you know, some of them were in the Black Spades, some of them were in the Puerto Rican Brothers, Savage Nomads. These were real tough, rough and tumble guys, and they were all older than I. And when they started seeing the Lee Ho cars, which were coming out almost on a daily basis, they wanted to find out who is this person and how are they doing this. So, there was this draw, this like magnetic force that like, wow, there's something really big here happening, because this guy's devoting, he can just do anything and paint his name everywhere very delinquently. But this guy's planning, and this guy is calculating, and this guy. So it drew them back out of retirement. And all 5 of them, Mono, Doc 109, Dirty Slug. What a name, right? Dirty Slug, right? Slave 1 and myself, the original core members of the Fabulous 5.
Freddie's not in there?
Freddie was not part of the Fabulous 5. Freddie, that's later on but the Fabulous 5, the core group, we were a contingent of 5 guys, very strict. And very early on, I took the heading. I was like, guys, let's keep this a close-knit group, because there's a lot of outside forces within that are going to be detrimental to our productions. So we have to keep it on the down low, zip, loose lips, sink ships, as they said, keep it on the down low, and we're gonna go and do big things. So for a short amount of time, we were the group to emulate. And
what year do you think that was? I'm just sorry to
from
geek out.
1975 all the way to 1979. So it was only 4 years.
That's kind of a long time, though.
It's a long time of a lot of stress and pressed, excursions into the tunnels. A lot of the times I found myself going by myself, because they're a band of brothers, but they were serious ill dudes like that. They were into the painting. Some of them had really creative abilities, but New York was very distracting and attracting at the same time at that time. So 1979, they were already laying down their cans, and I was like, what do you mean, we're just starting, just getting started, so that's where Fred comes in at that time.
Right on.
So, yeah.
So with the new book, when I first opened it up, I came to the page of you very young. I think it was like the 3rd or 4th page, where you're like drawing and there's all kinds of paint to the left of you. I was wondering, like, in terms of like being a young buck, like family, how did they react to something that was so new? I think, right, like painting trains, and did they know? Were they supportive?
At first, they did not know. First few times that I went, it was just, it was broad daylight, I was out, I could be out in the park anywhere. But then when I started going at night and then coming back out and coming back home at 6 in the morning, my mother started to like, hey, what's going on? Where you been all night? My mother was extremely supportive once she found out. And she found out by me actually announcing, Mom, I'm painting subways. She's like, what? At first she was like, she just had a little like, that old Puerto Rican, yeah, right, I don't even think she even knew the concept. I mean, I traveled a lot. The story with my family is my dad is a World War II veteran. My mother was a homemaker, but she also worked in creating these beautiful, what do they call it? I forget, ledgers, where they kept, records of taxes and things like that, and business records. And then she was a wonderful homemaker and a wonderful mother. And she always knew since I was a kid that I loved drawing. I was always drawn to the paper. So I think when I announced that I was painting subways, because we traveled the subways, there was not a car in the family, and we went everywhere by subways. She just like was trying to connect those dots. What do you mean you're painting the subways we ride on? And I told her straight up, I was like, look, Mom, I'm painting these subways, I'm painting incredible things. I need you to see what they are, but I need you to understand that you cannot stop me. I can't imagine telling my mother this. Probably 15 years old at that point, but by the time she found out, I was like, you cannot stop me, because if you try to, I would do it even more. ballsy. I mean, I'm surprised. My mother would, she would throw that chancla around the corner. It would hit me. It would go whoop, and then it would come back to her like a boomerang. I got my whoopings, for good reasons. But for some reason, she just gave not green light, but she said, just come home to me in one piece. And I was like, I will, Mom. And I always did, obviously, I'm here, right? But they were very supportive, and then my mom's later on came and benched trains with me. So she sat on the subway station, Brooklyn Bridge train station, because I knew that she could not believe what I was doing from all the stuff that was going on in the subways. I was like, Ma, I want you to see what I am creating. And I knew by then that I was creating something special.
Did she critique any of the work?
She did not. She was speechless. Literally, she was speechless. And when she saw that first whole car, one of the first whole cars, I already had a few under my belt. And I was like, here it comes, here it is, here it is. And she's looking around, I was like, there it is. And this bright banquet of flowers comes into the subway station. She's just like, and I'm like, I'm all excited. I'm taking pictures with my little 126 Instamatic camera. And she was just speechless, literally speechless. And the train, is in the station for a few seconds, picks, deploys people, grabs people, it runs off into the dark. And she was like, she couldn't even say it. So
it's a little different than, so we can't resist this segue here. We did this on purpose. But, so, hands up if you know what's going to happen in about a second. Anyway, here we go. So, this is like one of the most iconic visual hip hop scenes that I know of. Thanks to Charlie Ahern for this.
Hector, I thought you were supposed to be in boot camp. You know what's gonna shoot your ass? I ought to rearrange your face. That's what I should do. What the fuck is with that do-rag on your head anyway? And you're sitting at home doing this shit? You should be honored a medal for this. Stop fucking around and be a man. There ain't nothing out here for you. Oh yes, there is. This.
I remember when we did our first show, Patrick sent me that clip, and I was like, "Whoa!" I was like stoked. I didn't know it, but it kind of gets you pumped up. And this is just another crazy shout out, right? Like, the first song, if I'm not mistaken, right? The Genesis on Illmatic it starts off with that piece of dialogue, with that exchange, I think, doesn't it, Lee?
Yeah, it's one of the songs. The Beastie Boys use some of the words out of the film. I mean, a number of artists. My wife here, she would remember more. She much better remembers things much more as far as music. But he used it. I mean, he was very much influenced by the film, and he grew up in the projects on the waterfront as well, in the Queensbridge project. Right, so we had a lot to identify with.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll come back to Wild Style, but we couldn't resist that family segue into that great scene with Hector, right? Yeah. So back to just, we're gonna start to segue slightly out of the subway yards and stuff, but I got I never did any of it, right? I'm not anything wrong with running away, like I'm not doing it, So how did you do it, right? How did you do it? So Lisa, I don't know if you know this, but it's adorable. But Lee is a total train nut. I don't think you have a model train, but he has everything but the model train. It is he knows every single thing. Well, let's see if I don't know if he knows this, but what are the dimensions of a car, Lee? Length and height.
Well, this is an IRT. This is an IRT.
There you go.
That's the number 4 train.
Okay. See what I mean?
So the IRT trains are 3 sets of doors, 3 doors, and they're 52 feet long by almost 7 feet high. The face of the train.
And 7 feet high.
Yeah,
the face of the train.
Yeah, the actual when you're on the platform is more or less like close.
And between the platform and the ground.
And then between the platform and the ground is close to about almost 4 feet.
4
So
feet.
when you're sitting at track level,
That's nuts.
the bottom of the train that you see on the platform is about 4 feet above
I
you.
put Dondi up, of course, this famous picture, just because there's an acrobatics to this. I wish I didn't find it, but Cause, who's a giant Lee fan and a wonderful dear friend of Lee's, of course, he had this great quote about you guys making 52-foot wide paintings, by 7 feet high in the middle of the night, in darkness, when you're 3-4 feet back from your surface area, from your work surface. So I just have endless how did you actually do this? How did you illuminate? How did you? Anyway.
This is a great shot by Martha Cooper. To give her credit, she went into the yards with Dondi that night, and this was sort of, to all respect to Dondi, who started doing whole cars around 1979, 1980 or so, himself. This was sort of a good crutch for him because the train that he's leaning on is maybe about 3.5 feet away, so he could just prop himself up and become this tripod of painting action. I didn't have that luxury. Because I painted on the elevated tracks above the Bronx, and also in subway tunnels where literally the train was only about 1.5 feet away from me. So the train is this close to me while I'm painting it, and it starts at this level when you're standing at track level. So I'm climbing up to 10 feet above the ground, and then basically on the open track level, on the elevated structures, I would climb on the little edge that his foot is on, which is only about 1/2 inch, and climb across the car like Spider-Man, and just basically use the windows and the rain girders just to hold on with one hand
for hours.
No, not hours. I would say if you try and just hang your whole weight on one arm for at least 5 minutes, you're like this. By the time you're at 3 minutes, I was like this at 10 minutes, strong, and because I built a lot of upper body strength, and I would literally climb around this car on the car itself without the help of ladders. Never use ladders, or in cases like this where
You had some light on your head maybe or something, no? Or?
No, total darkness. On the street, on the elevated structures, you have the illumination of the streets above you. But very scary because you're very open. You could see this is inside of a subway yard. No one's in there. So out on the elevated, you're on the middle track that's not being used, and both tracks on both sides of that are live, uptown and downtown trains. So you're painting this train, looking out for a lot of really bad stuff to happen to you, but you're looking out for those trains coming down track. Which I was never afraid of being, though I came very close, really close, this close, of a train hitting me at 50 miles an hour, but I was very much afraid of a train seeing me, because my fear was if I'm disturbed in the middle of a masterpiece and it's undone, it's the most detrimental thing to it's got to be finished.
It's is that like a personal passion / reputational thing?
Oh yeah. So for that reason, I was, including with the Fabulous Five, which they didn't have that kind of practice instilled in them. I was like, no, operative, Navy SEAL kind of, secretive. Everything was very under the radar, low frequency, very. Just low key.
Special, you did a 10-car train or several of them, right?
Yeah, so let me correct that. So, in 1976, during the bicentennial, and during that weekend, the first whole train was painted by Kane One, and Kane One, Roger, a number of guys. They painted the number 7 train, which was parked right besides Met Stadium. Anyway. Sorry, Dodgers. They did come from Brooklyn, all right?
There's a huge train yard right there by the
train yard. Sorry. Anyway, they painted the first train there. The thing is that train never saw service. It was broken up as it was running out of the yards. The dispatcher said, "Oh, no. That has to go back in and get disbanded and cleaned," or whatever it was. I think at that time, the city was broke. So was the MTA. They just disbanded the cars everywhere, so there were just like whole cars scattered all over the system. My whole train, without me knowing that happened, I figured out, again, the Navy SEAL in me, or whatever, I was like, we paint this train in a spot, I won't reveal it yet, but in a spot where when it comes out into service, the dispatcher will not see it. So when it pulls into service, it picks up the conductor, the motorman is up front, goes into service, the first successful whole train painted.
That rolled,
complete top to bottom, end to end, 10 cars.
What year was that? You 76?
The end of 76, November of 76 into Christmas, yeah.
Wow. And, let's see here. There we go. And this is obviously, this is key, right? Like, another first here, or is this idea of the standalone piece, the mural, this is a painting, right? In the city, of the city, on the city. I suppose this had some level of exposure, but nothing. Tell us about that.
So this was done in the spring of 1978, in the Lower East Side, right in the schoolyard of my junior high school that I was attending, or semi-attending at that time. I did this under the cover of darkness and prayer and wish, to just pull it off. I was driven to this because I just felt like this was a whole new audience. Let me take it back. Whole cars. The reason why I just got fixated on whole cars is that I wanted to grasp the attention and the respect of the average train rider. The average person. The writers themselves would see it and they would critique it and whatever. But I was like, I want to change the conversation and the temperature in this room by really tantalizing the audience that's bigger than all of us, which is all of New York. And the same thing with this wall. At that time, by 1978, I'm into my second year as the most wanted graffiti writer in the New York City area by the MTA police, right? And on the top of the list. And I took a big chance at this, but it was in my neighborhood. I felt I had exhausted everything that I could do on a subway, including a whole train and whole cars scattered all over. I want to create a wall that people come to instead of where people just get, exposed to it and it runs away. So, yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
Let's see. Where are we at here? Time check, Heidi? We okay? Okay.
I'll keep it short.
All right. Okay, we got another masterpiece, another great Martha Cooper picture, but we're going to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick's got a question. I think we're going to, here we go.
So like with Stop the Bomb, and like even in some of the just when you had mentioned that you're speaking to the general audience of New York, the passerby, I noticed messages that you write, like the Howard the Duck piece, small, just a tag. You're saying stop the draft, stop the bomb. Are you kind of responding to things in real time in an urgent way, like with all this work, and like where does the politics come from in your work?
Yeah, I mean, it comes from just being that curious cat that, and curiosity didn't kill this cat, but I just was curious about, like, the Vietnam War was televised right in front of me for years, right, as a young child growing up. It just totally traumatized me. And just thinking about, like, what my dad might have seen and heard and felt in World War II, and then hearing about the whole Cold War in full effect at that time. So I was, with the wall, with the handball wall, where that was my announcement that I felt that I had arrived as an artist by saying graffiti is an art, and if art is a crime, let God forgive us all. Right? I think I might have even misspelled it or something, but I was nervous. Right? I'm on a ladder for this one, and I'm sitting on top of that wall looking, but I'm saying I have arrived, and I know this movement has arrived. and that was 1978. With the trains, I felt that this was a moving wall that could be like the paper. It can go everywhere, and if someone that is painting in the dead of night, painting about nuclear devastation, that I'm going to get more of a reaction from something like that, to talk about the issues that now, today, we're now thinking about, not mesmerized, but terrorized by it. Because I read the paper every day, and I'm thinking about the struggles and the friction around the world, and here comes that talk again. So I just wanted to address that because it was something that to this day it still moves me to talk about.
Yeah, we put a contemporary piece up here, kind of charting a course for more contemporary time for our moment. But you did our last show was totally political, right? We've got the Native American piece above you now.
Yeah, and this is a play on words. You hear it all the time. Get off my lawn. If you don't like it, get out of this country. No one has the authority to say that except the Native American Indians of this country. And for someone to say that, I hear things all the time in New York. I'm like, what? So those words stick to me, and I play with them. I'm like, I'm going to throw a little humor and maybe a little sarcastic behavior into the words. Get off my dawn, because we took the dawn, not we here, but this concept that we're still trying to figure out took the dawn away from a generation of people, and that's affected them to this day. And it's affected my people, it's affected a lot of people here, the experience of just so anyway.
Do you think that some of that, like that writing, that poetry that you would probably write on the wall, found its way to the post graffiti paintings, like the studio work, like just the writings? And some of the tablets and get off, my dawn, all this, is that, do you see a connection with that, or where did that come from?
Oh yeah, I was on the trains. I was writing a lot of poetry in my whole course. I was coming up with things and isms and all kinds of stuff, just writing. I just felt like words had a little bit more boost to because I figured that people will see something that's painted really beautifully and say, oh, I don't want to look at that, but they'll look at words. They'll read words, they'll read something. So I felt that if I wrote something, it would draw the eye to the actual visuals on the car. So here, and that was very spontaneous and urgent at that time. But here I'm writing on my walls, on my studio walls. These are plates from my walls. And this is stuff that just comes out of me as I'm thinking, or I'm hearing a song, or I'm thinking of a title for a show, or
just get you talking and it comes out. I don't know how you never wrote lyrics for people being so close to the hip hop.
Were some of these inspired by raps, or rap music was probably the soundtrack. But what was it, like something like that? You were like, oh, I can write poetry too, or is it just something totally different?
No, it was totally different. I was writing on, when I was writing on the subways, it was before even rap was a term, right? So I was just doing poetry. I still do it. I still do it to this day, misspelled and all. I just write stuff really fast, and then I come back and I, correct it and all. But these things are like my soundboards, and they sort of inform stuff that I'm going to do in the future, or right there at the minute, or things that I've done in the past, and I'm sort of regurgitating and kind of like bringing back so I can inform my future.
These things are the greatest. When I first visited Lee, it was in his East Williamsburg studio, and it was like this 7 feet, 8 feet high. Just everywhere, you were surrounded by these color tests and these little tags, and sometimes you'd write little notes about a garage and an appointment or a dentist. Everything's in there. Looking in the mirror's mirror. This stuff is just endless. And I was like, oh, Lee, man, like how do we give somebody this experience? And then Lee composed these pieces and created them. I have this is like there's another great one, Flanked by Flakes. Don't let fear dictate your actions instead of sparking your courage. Send in the clowns. It spits out this stuff constantly. And then there's the masterpiece, the Voices Carry piece. These are your studio's in the Navy Yard for what, basically the 90s, right? 95 to 2005, something like that?
Correct. Yeah.
And this plywood dates back to World War II Navy plywood, right? Mm-hmm. And people would come over, like there's some heavies on here, right? Like would it Stay High, isn't that a famous?
Stay High 149, Jose Parla, Mayor 139, Doc 109's one of the Fat Five members. maybe a couple extra.
I have this thought that this is another.
Me too.
I have a half-formed thought about these pieces. We see graffiti in the world, and there's a function of time, right? Like it was one thing. Maybe people have added to it. It's been buffed. It's been tagged again. We see that in Patrick's work all the time. This evocation of time, but this is a cultivation of accumulated graffiti over 10 years, and the tablets are the same. He was in this studio for something like 10 years. And so this is, there's an organicism that Lee let just flourish, right? Do whatever you want. Or I don't know if you direct people, but ultimately at the end, there is choice. There is, you compose the slides, you decide where you're gonna cut. This feels like another first because it's about graffiti as a function of time and aggregation as a thing.
Sure.
Not just one person is superimposing over another, but aesthetically, there's something here that feels new to me. Anyway, I love the hell out of these time-based pieces.
And it's never planned. It's all spontaneous, and they kind of go over each other, and so
we got to touch on another couple firsts. I'm not trying to zoom toward the finish, but another first that Heidi went over in the beginning was, and Patrick did this too, and where you came in from the street into the white cube, right? And we've got above you the white column show. We'll just sample, just kind of show you what we've got, Lee, just so you know. And then we've got the Sinatra drawing. I want you to just expand on this. My memory is that this commemorates you and Freddie in Rome with your first show in like 1980, something like that. Is that right?
1979.
79. And you're blasting My Way, walking down the streets of the Via Condotti or something like that?
No, we're actually blasting some funk music and whatnot, but it was 1979, and we're walking through the streets totally jet lagged, and we had this big boombox, and people were throwing all kinds of stuff out. In the movies when you see people like the shutters open, there was lights were coming on everywhere. We were like 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 New Yorkers walking through the streets with a boombox, blasting it like we did in the hood. And it was just like one of those, like, hey, we thought everyone would do this. So I did this drawing in 1980 from that experience,
That's great.
A few people were screaming and cursing at us in Italian. I was like, oh my God. But it was the first show that Fred and I had in Rome, Italy, and then 1980 was the next show at the White Column.
Right. Okay. So I know we've all got it in the timeline. I didn't actually put the slide in here, but what's the brief chronology of you crossing over, Lee? So was it the European shows were first, and then White Columns? Or?
Yeah, it was the first show of graffiti-based art in Europe, in all of Europe, in 1979.
That's the Medusa, Gallery Medusa in Rome. Is that
Galleria La Medusa, run by Tony Allen and Claudio Bruni.
Right.
And they were huge collectors themselves. They were, high royalty in the art and political markets. And they just saw something that they felt that they can, explore.
Right on.
So, yeah.
And there's one other thing. Patrick and I talked about something that we thought would be important is, Patty and Fun Gallery. We knew you'd want to say something.
Yeah.
Talk about Fun Gallery and talk about Patty.
Patty and Bill Stelling, her partner, opened up the Fun Gallery in the early 80s. She gave me one of my first shows in 1982. I was already showing, but I did a show with her, so did Fred, Futura, Kenny Sharp, Jean-Michel Basquiat, who actually shared a studio. Fred, Jean-Michel, and myself had a studio together for about 6 or 7 months down on Canal Street in 1979. And she was instrumental in getting the whole the whole Lower East Side movement, like the new avant-garde galleries going in the East Village, as they call it. I call it the Avenue. Everyone that's from there calls it the Avenue. Avenue A, B, C, D. Buck wild. You did not want to go there. This young lady and Bill Stelling had stretch limos sitting outside. There were the people in the some people were getting out of the limo to cop some drugs and then go into the gallery. It was that kind of crazy thing. Joe knows, Dante. So, it was very heroic of her to open those doors and sort of create a platform and she just passed away about a week and a half ago. Unfortunately, did not get her due, and mad respect for her for giving some of us our first shows.
What were the years of the Fun Gallery again, Lee? If you don't, not to put you too much on the spot.
1981, I believe. It was late 81 all the way to 19. It wasn't that long, like 87.
Yeah.
If I'm correct. Yeah. There was 2 locations. I had my show at her first location on 11th Street, between Second Avenue and Avenue. Second Avenue and Avenue. No, between Second and Third. Yeah, Second and Third, and then she moved the operations to 11th Street, just off of Second Avenue and Avenue A, or First Avenue or so. Yeah, or it might have been First Avenue, I forget, but yeah.
And you know, there's one thing that Patrick and I wish we could have put in there, which was I didn't put it in, but there's a scene where you and Patty are in Wild Style. You come out of the club, right? And it's kind of a pretty gripping scene. Like, it feels just like you know, it has this quiet escalation to it. It's on Fat Five Freddy's Instagram in case you guys want to nerd out. But
it's a real scene. I mean, it's not real that we're getting robbed and stuck up. There were a lot of stick-up kids back then. That gun was loaded and real for that scene. It was, those guys were, you know, they were operating, and they were like, yeah, sure, we'll be in the film. You need a gun? We got one. Swear to God. And we did that scene. I never knew. I mean, imagine that happening these days. I mean, it still happens, even in big sets, as we've heard recently, right? But I don't even know how that still happens. But, you know, that was a real scene with a real sawed-off shotgun by real dudes. They were like, yeah, we'll do it. Yeah, here we go. We don't need to rehearse. We're good. We got this. You know, I mean, Patty was quite new to that game. I saw a lot of that stuff, you know, but she was new to that game.
So, you and Charlie just celebrated 40 years of Wild Style. Like, just wondering, like,
Charlie Ahern.
Charlie Ahern. How has that movie affected like your life?
I mean, it's amazing. The film. I once bumped into Mos Def on the street. Oh man, I forget his new. Yeah, and we bumped. You know, we were both waiting for the light, which is rare, right? In New York, you're like, yeah, sure. And we're both waiting for the light. He turns right, like, Lee. That he saw me. He's like, Lee, I just want to tell you that film changed my life. Wow. You know, a number of people that had seen that film with you know, bright open eyes at that time. I looked at it many times, and I've learned, and I've earned the right and the respect to love it now as a real cultural artifact of the time, and a masterpiece. And I didn't realize the genius behind it, that Charlie was just letting everything be as it was. None of us were acting, we were just being ourselves. And that film now just celebrated its 40th anniversary. It's amazing that 40 years ago, that has changed the world. And it's amazing to be here at 50 years after picking up my first cans of rattle cans, you know, whatever you want to call them. I'm like, people don't even live that long sometimes. And I've been painting for that long. And it's just amazing to get what I call the exchange rate is good when people come to you, strangers, out of nowhere, and say, Lee, you changed my life. Some people, you saved my life. You've given me direction. I'm like, you know, and even in my lowest moments, which I have plenty of those, where I'm like blacked out, I'm, you know, just like, I don't have anything to say, and someone comes and, you know, hey Lee, just want to let you know, keep it up. It's like angels. They come from everywhere, and that's the incredible strength of this movement, and the feedback that you get back is more important to me than anything else.
The exchange rate is good.
The exchange rate is good, baby. Because it hits you right when you need it, and you know it. You know, it's better than anything, any of the, you know, the vices that we love or whatever. You know. Yeah.
One more question. I was curious about the new spit paintings, the new works, you know, and the new works of the show.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Can you talk about that?
So they're little snippets of like my memory. It's like little like sort of they're like little hotspots from just thinking 50 years in the making, people that have affected me, my family, my friends, my peers, my enemies, frenemies. Here's, I'm just paying homage. I'm just sort of having a conversation about dad and father. I have a few works based on that. This is one that I'm just like, you know, he's going back to a supportive family. He's kind of quiet. He always walked around my den, my dresser, where I had all my cans of paint, where I would test them. He'd be like, psst, psst, you know, just be walking. He was so frustrated by the smell of spray paint in the house. Because I was always, psst, yep, that's the color I'm using tonight. But I'm just having a conversation with, you know, conversation about conversations we never had. So it's called Father's Day, but it's the main title is Spit number, I think that's Spit number 3 or 6, I think. And it's based, and spit comes from the term of spinning your marker to liven it up, to give it more life, and just bring all the ink up to the head, and then it's nice and juicy and drippy again. So it's nice. It's almost like a little Jackson Pollock, you know, tool to use. So a lot of these paintings have that effect of them.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
And you can see these on Saturday night at the gallery in Chinatown. So do you have practical questions for me?
I just want to say thank you I just want to say thank you everyone for coming out. I didn't say it in the beginning. Thank you so much. Some cat came from 8 hours away. I mean, salute to you wherever you may be. It's great to be in front of y'all. Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh yeah, we can do the pass the mic around thing, or you can just shout it out and I'll try to repeat it, or whatever you guys want.
Hey Lee, thanks for having us all here and for sharing your life and work. Hi Tamara. I'm just curious, you know, as I'm watching this, I'm thinking about everything you were doing as a child without social media and without all of the distractions that kids have now. And I know that you're a family man and you have kids, and I'm just curious if you can talk a little bit about what you see in youth culture now that might be similar to what you were doing back then, or are you not seeing anything? I'd just be really curious about your perspective now.
Yeah, good question. Really good. It's a little bit more, I would say, amplified now because of social media. So you get a dosage, a huge dosage of what's going on. Maybe a little bit too much to kind of like digest and put together and maybe even get influenced by. Sort of like flashes in the pan now, but we did the same thing with those trains. Those trains were the Instagram of the 1970s. It was like damn, look at that car. Instagram. It really was, it just speaks to the importance of youth having this dialogue between each other, and we will invent it. And against all odds, we will bring it to find ourselves in the crowds and all the distractions and attractions, and find a way of like sharing ideas and making new ones. And hatching new ideas, right? So there is a similarity, but it's much more supercharged, turbocharged, whatever you, nitrous oxide, whatever you want to call it now. I think it's maybe that's a process that some people will have to go through and find themselves more validated and more relevant if they just slow it down a little bit and just, okay, let me get away from the noise, and I'm gonna have a conversation with these people that are gonna make much more bigger noise at the end. If that makes sense. Yeah.
Lee, I'm proud to have seen all your work in person. Oh, no, I'm good. But your trains, your walls, have had such a profound influence on so many, and I think that's why so many people in the video are saying thank you, because you have had such a profound effect. But I had kind of a nerdy question for you, and I've never quite understood. But in the Wild Style film, think it's Gandhi who's painting the Wild Star piece, right? Why is that?
Oh my God, I was such a different. Charlie was a very patient man. Jane Dixon was a very patient woman because she was involved in the film in the background. But I basically said to Charlie, that was in the midst of me putting a lot of cars together as well in the early 80s. And I was like, I'm never going to be filmed showing, I don't want anyone ever seeing the way I paint and where I paint and how I paint and when I paint. So I was like, I ain't doing those scenes. And Charlie, but you're on contract. I'm like, I don't care. I ain't coming to set. And he was very patient. He found Dondi to fill in for me in some of those scenes. And I just stood home. At a certain point, I thought I might, get kicked off the film, but we were already deep into it. And I was like, no, Charlie, you got to respect what one of the scenes with Patty is really kind of like true, where she's like, takes a picture of me. I'm like, yo, I don't want that happening. Like, no, I didn't want people to know how I operated. Because I was afraid for my life, quite honestly. I got harassed by police. They knew who I was. They followed me. They staked out my mother's building outside. Long story short, they tried to turn me at one point and tortured me. And I was like, these guys are real business and they ain't gonna catch me. And they ain't, catch me if you can. So for that reason, I was very zipped, no one sees
In the Rapture video, you're all decked out, right? All covered up, right, in the Blondie video.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I was trying to, I had a Kango and some Cazals or whatever. I was trying to find, but no, I was even then I was a little nervous, but I was like, yeah, this is Debbie, this is Chris Stein, this is Blondie. Like, yeah, this is like one of the greatest bands in the world. Like, why not? Jean-Michel was also part of that, and Fred. Jean was playing, was taking place for Flash, Grandmaster Flash. And that was fun. That was a lot of fun. That was that inflection moment where music, DJing, art, poetry, everything was coming on.
81 or 82?
That was we were filming that. Actually, we were filming that in late 80 and and 80. Yeah, that video came out in 1981. Yeah, pretty crazy. I mean, Debbie and Chris were so, like so many other souls, they were so instrumental in giving us that support.
That's true.
It was a great supporting cast, if you want to call it, where they came in and they believed it, because they went through struggles too. A lot of things were being experimental. There were experimental stages at the time, and New York was just going through the test, and we said, bet.
They stated that you were like one of the first and like in the beginning, so I just wanted to know who inspired you as far as like your style and how you write, and also like your cartooning as well. Like, what was the inspiration on that? Because I know we all get inspired, like you inspire a lot, so I was wondering what inspired you, or what artist or what type of art. Or
well, here's it may sound a little silly, but to me it was serious because of the Cold War at the time. I was inspired first by Japanese films, right? By Japanese science fiction films. The Big G was my boy, right? Godzilla, right? Like that was one of my first inspirations. But DC Comics, Marvel Comics, advertisements on the trains, but on the trains themselves, Blade 1 and Cliff 159 were the top dogs, and I was like, I want to do that kind of stuff. I want to do just as good or better, but I want to bring it up a notch. And they were very, they were the guys to look at that time. Two brothers, one from the Bronx, one from East Harlem, and that came from challenging places, and I was from the Lower East Side, so the inspiration was cats like that and situations like that. And just my own my self-agency, the feeling like I know I'm doing something good when everybody's pointing fingers. Yeah. There's a phrase in one of those songs, just because things are right now doesn't mean they were wrong then. Mm-hmm. I love that phrase. And it's true. Like when you find your rhythm, you find your lane, you're like, no one can stop this train. So I have to give myself a little, pat on the back for just being resilient and I just push myself against all odds. Yeah. I still do my work in concept.
I noticed.
So, and the world inspires me as well. Just listening to people, hearing things, feeling things, vibes. Vibes to me are more important than ideas. They're two different things. You feel something in the room, that's your first intuition, to things, and that's where it kind of pushes my work. Sometimes I got nothing to say. I'll sit there and I'll look at the walls for like days. I'm like, I ain't got nothing to say. I'm walking out, and then I walk out the door and I hear something in a song or I feel something, and I'm like, boom, U-turn back into the studio. And then I'll either write on the wall or I'll just start painting and throwing paint all over the place. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Lee Quinones. Come cheers.
Come on, Saturday night.